Hi there, everybody. Welcome to the show. Glad you could join me, or should I say us, since there's a bunch of us in the chat. Happy Friday. There's TikTok Shives from Dana. How do you know? I was on a pretty good streak. With these live streams with Dana either on the air with me or in the chat, not hitting me with a TikTok Shives when I was a few seconds late. But anyway, um, and by the way, I see some new people here. Beth earlier said that she's a new subscriber, so welcome, and Christian as well, a new member, a new Patreon patron. So yeah, welcome to new people. Always good to have new people. Dana, you're so patient. You're so giving. You even waited to the count of 10. Anyway, welcome new people. Welcome people who've been here before, regulars and newcomers. As usual, I will be spending the first portion of the show asking questions that were submitted ahead of time by my Patreon patrons and channel members. So if you are with us in the live chat and you have something that you want me to talk about, something you want me to see, something you want to ask me, please hold on to it until I get through the patron and member questions, and then I will spend the rest of the show hanging out in the live chat and talking about whatever you you want to talk. And Jan as well. Yes, thank all. Hello to all the new people. All right, I turn away from the live chat now and turn toward the pre-submitted patron and member questions. The first of which comes to us from Oasis, who says, "Hey, Steve, I wanted to get your overall feelings coming out of the DNC. My feelings, admittedly, are pretty mixed. I thought that while we started really strong, aside from Governor Walz and VP Harris, we didn't really end on the same notes. That, plus I feel like the uncommitted movement and Palestinians in general deserve to be treated better. Don't get me wrong, I'm still excited to vote, but I would be lying if I said both of those things didn't bum me out. R.I.P. Sid Vicious, fuck cancer." I mean, it was a convention. It was a, for what it was good. It was a modern American political convention. It was basically a 4-night commercial for the ticket, and on that basis, I think it succeeded very well. Can I imagine people who weren't already excited about voting for Harris getting excited because of that convention? Not really. I don't know if it really had that effect, but for what it was, I thought it was good. I agree with you about freezing out the uncommitted movement. I read the text of the speech that the I can't remember her name now, but the Palestinian American representative from Georgia, she was the one that was proposed to give the speech representing Palestinians and the uncommitted movement. And after they decided not to let her speak at the convention, they released the text of the speech, and it seemed completely fine to me. Nothing incendiary in there. It was a perfectly fine speech that would have taken up a few minutes of time during the convention, but they said no, and that was disappointing. But no, I thought it was fine. It was fine. It seemed like a serious political convention put on by serious people, unlike the Republican convention that was a clown show. So it's got that much, on the competition. Havar Hajem, I'd like to hear your take on Star Trek TNG season 6, episode 20, The Chase, where Picard and the USS Enterprise crew encounter the Founders, or Changelings, which became so central for the later favorite of yours, Deep Space Nine. If I understand it right, the Founders came up with a fairy tale story in this episode, told it to the Klingons, humans, Romulans, Vulcans, and Cardassians by claiming they had a finger with the development of all these races. Fast forward to DS9, and their true plan is revealed: to gain power over both sides of the wormhole and make slaves of every other race. How do you conclude this Star Trek TNG episode with the DS9 knowledge that came later? I mean, that's a creative sort of headcanon for that episode. Obviously, that is not what actually happens in that episode. There is no indication that the race which Picard and the Enterprise crew encounter that recording of at the end were changelings, or that it was like a ruse concocted by the changelings to pull some kind of a scam on the Federation and the Klingons and the Romulans and the Cardassians and the other, species that were involved in that. But that is clever. And of course, the connection there, and the reason why someone might think of that is that the makeup, the character design for that ancient race that are discovered at the end of the chase, the makeup design is kind of similar to changelings, kind of very flat, plain, smooth features, sort of like a generic humanoid kind of character design. And also the actor who plays the progenitor who appears to Picard and the others at the end of that episode is Salome Jens, who also played the female changeling, who was kind of the leader of the changelings that we saw in Deep Space Nine. So, there are some connections there that make it work. But yeah, that is not how I interpret that episode. I see no need to interpret the episode that way. I don't really think that adds anything, nor is it remotely suggested by anything actually in the show. But it's clever. It's a clever little bit of headcanon there. Ghost Wheel, do you have a favorite hat from movies, TV that you think you could totally pull off? Do you have one you love, but no way you would be caught dead wearing? Not really. I mean, like there are certain hats that are closely associated with characters I like. I mean, obviously there's Indiana Jones's hat. There's Jack Dalton's pilot hat from MacGyver that I think of, that is sort of, kind of essential to his character, that you do see him without it, but you see him with it much more often than you see him without it. So, stuff like that. But no, I don't have a favorite, and there's not one that I can think of that I wish that I had, or that I like but think I couldn't pull off. I'm generally opposed to people in the modern era wearing anything other than baseball hats. I think if you live in the modern era, especially here in the West, here in the United States and sort of Western civilization, with our prevailing culture, if you wear something other than a baseball cap as a hat, I kind of think you're a little ridiculous. I admit that's my own personal bias. I fully acknowledge that, but that's how I feel. John Burns, R.I.P. Johnny and Matthew Gaudreau, killed riding their bicycles in their home state of New Jersey last night. Farewell, Johnny Hockey. You can pause here and say something if you want. I don't think that'll be necessary. I'd written something about not liking your political videos, but understanding that this is the time of year for you to make them. Also, you had posted a Hulk Hogan video, which I didn't much care about, as I grew up in Calgary with the likes of the Hart family. Stu Hart, the father, his sons, Bruce and Keith, and later Brett and Owen, plus Jim the Anvil Neidhart, who went on to the WWF, later the WWE. I think Hogan was influenced too much by watching Vince McMahon, and not in a good way. But if you're going to show wrestling videos, don't go back to the 80s. Talk about the future. I want people I can cheer on, not hearing about the past. What's this? Another video about Ric Flair? No. Who's the future? Not those who are long past. Maybe have some fun with your stuffed animals as reporters. I think I'm going to pass on that one too. And to correct you a little bit. Well, first of all, don't forget Smith Hart. Smith was one of the Hart brothers as well. You left him out. Hogan was not influenced by Vince McMahon. If anything, Vince McMahon was influenced by Hogan. Hogan was already a big star, on his way to becoming a bigger star when Vince McMahon signed him. Don't forget, Hogan's sort of big break was appearing in Rocky III. A very small role. He's only in one scene, but nonetheless, like, that's what sort of got people outside of wrestling fans to start paying attention to Hulk Hogan. And then it was very shortly after that his pro wrestling career started to skyrocket. And that was all before he signed on for his legendary 80s run in the WWF, which began at the very, very end of 1983 and then kicked off in January of 1984 when he beat the Iron Sheik for the title at Madison Square Garden. But he was already a big star when that happened. So Hogan was not influenced by Vince. If anything, Vince and his style of wrestling And his overall presentation of WWF wrestling in the 80s was very much keyed off of Hogan, not the other way around. Brian Baker, hey Steve, missed the last Ask Away and the patrons and members Zoom call because I had an operation to fix the carpal tunnel and cubital nerve in my left arm. Right now, I look like I have a good start on a mummy costume with the bandages on the arm. Anyway, enough complaining. I want to know if you ever listened to Jim Cornette's wrestling podcast. He's a character. Yes. And I found out about it from my son. He's very opinionated, but amusing as well. Great work the past month. The careful what you ask video made me spit out my drink, and your Hogan video was directly on point. Keep up the good work and take $20 out of petty cash and get yourself a nice, refreshing drink of your choice. Enjoy the Ask Away. They're way ahead of you on the drink, buddy, but thank you. And this the can does not. In fact, the case does not cost $20. So I'm coming out ahead there. Yeah, I listened to Jim Cornette. He is a character. He is a character. There are some things he says that have me sort of rolling my eyes and thinking, oh, Jesus Christ. But, I mean, politically, he's much more on the liberal left-leaning side. He hates Donald Trump, which is always going to endear him close to my heart. And he pulls no punches about politics. His takes on wrestling, for the most part, are in line with my own taste. I think he's a little too inflexible. I think he's a little too close-minded. He's kind of made up his mind on certain things. He's way too snidely dismissive of women's wrestling, I think. Although even with that, you know, he is a big fan of Rhea Ripley, and he's a big fan of a handful of other women wrestlers who are big stars and are really good. And, you know, he doesn't begrudge them their talent or their popularity or their stardom just because they're women. But his overall attitude toward the general project of women's wrestling, I find very sexist and very dismissive, which I don't care for. And there are a couple of other points where he's maybe a little too inflexible, but generally speaking, what he considers good wrestling is what I consider good wrestling. And his problems with the current wrestling product usually are the same problems that I have. So, so we agree very much on that, and we agree on politics as well. The only times when I find myself kind of shaking my head disappointed at him is when he falls into the trap, as he sometimes does, of thinking that just because something was funny or acceptable in the 80s, therefore it should be funny or acceptable now. And if people are upset about it now, but they wouldn't have been upset about it then that's their problem, not his problem. Like, the fact that people changed is the problem, not that he didn't change. And he's not nearly as bad with that as other people his age. He's in his mid 60s now, and he's not nearly as bad about that as other people his age and his demographic, right? He's a 60 something white man from Kentucky. So it could be a lot worse. But he still has that issue where, you know, he'll say something insensitive or problematic, and the answer is, look, old man, just update your views a little bit, you know, come into the future with the rest of us. And he tends to have the instinct of falling back on, well, I've been making that joke for years and nobody was offended by it before, like that kind of thing, which is not the attitude you want to have, you know? But generally speaking, yes, I do listen to Cornette's podcast regularly, and with those caveats I just described in mind, I am generally speaking a fan of his. And of course, when he was active in the business, he was a fantastic wrestling manager. He's one of the greatest wrestling managers of all time, and a great promo. General Contact Unit Problem Child. 1, I came across an argument in a video by someone from Australia who claims to be far left, and I wanted to get your take on it. Here's my summary. The idea that Trump being president would cause more Palestinian deaths is just an unfalsifiable hypothetical. Given that, what message are you sending to Palestinians by voting for a candidate like Harris, who's complicit in an attempt to genocide them? What message are you sending if you're not willing to risk your own comfort by maybe letting Trump win to potentially create change in the future? I had a funny Star Trek question in mind this week, but I shelved it because I need someone more articulate than me to react to this argument. 2, are you concerned that Harris is polling lower than Biden or Hillary were in late August? Some people have expressed concern, but it's important to remember that they had been campaigning for months, not weeks. Well, the answer to the first question is I don't. The problem isn't how the uncertainty that is at play and, what would Trump's presidency actually result as far as the Palestinians. It is unfalsifiable and hypothetical. It's in the future. We don't know for sure what will happen, but that's true of literally every prediction about the future. What we do know is what Donald Trump has said. We know what his stated intentions are. We know that he has an open, avowed, unapologetic hostility toward Palestinian people, and not just ones in Palestine either. We know that he has said not just will he be more supportive of Netanyahu's war in Gaza than the current administration has been. Not only would he do more to help them, but he would also mistreat and persecute Palestinians who are in this country, and also people who express sympathies for Palestinians. He's talked about wanting to deport Palestinians who are in this country, and also deport people who have been judged to have quote unquote Hamas sympathies, whatever that would even mean to the Trump administration. He's talked about no longer allowing Palestinian refugees to come to this country. Under any measurable metric, judging by Trump's own stated intentions, his administration would be far worse for the Palestinian people, those trapped in Gaza and Palestinians just in general as a group, than a Harris administration would be. So if you're a one issue voter and your only issue is wanting to see the best possible outcome for the people of Gaza and for Palestinians as a whole, there is no reason, no justification for voting for Donald Trump, or for voting in a way that would aid Donald Trump in becoming the president. It's a ridiculous argument. And as all arguments about this issue that try to discourage people from voting or discourage people from voting for the Democrat are, ultimately, it is a selfish argument. It is choosing talk about wanting to protect your own comfort. You're protecting your own comfort at the expense of Palestinian people if you are not voting for the Democrat in this election. Not because Harris's administration would be all that great for Palestinians, to be quite honest, and it's disappointing to have to say this. It probably won't be all that much better or better at all for the Palestinians than the Biden administration has been. I hope it will be, but I can't realistically predict that. It probably won't be all that different, especially with Harris promising that she won't support an arms embargo to try and force the Netanyahu government to change course. So you don't vote for the Democrat on the Gaza issue because they're going to be good for Gaza. You vote for the Democrat, you vote for Kamala Harris on the Gaza issue because she will not be as bad as Trump. Trump has told us repeatedly how bad he will be for the Palestinians. And if you vote in such a way that makes it more likely that Trump becomes the president, then you are contributing to that. But the people who are saying, well, oh God, I couldn't vote for anyone who was complicit in a genocide. Okay, then you're choosing your own comfort over that of the Gazans. You're choosing your own conscience, your own moral purity over what would be the best outcome of two completely non-ideal outcomes. Admittedly, if your only issue is what's going on in Gaza and the effect that the United States presidency might have on that, there is no good choice. Either way, the president is not going to be someone who will, in all likelihood, do positive things for the people of Gaza. And that sucks. But there is a difference between them. One, Harris will not be nearly as bad as the other, Trump. That's just the way it is. And if you're saying, well, I'm not going to vote for Harris because her administration has been complicit. Okay, fine. Soothe your conscience. Choose your own comfort. Choose your own moral comfort over contributing to the best of the admittedly shitty possible outcomes of the election for the Gazans. You go ahead and do that. Good for you. Don't expect me to be impressed. Don't expect me to pat you on the head and admire you for having some kind of great courage, because that's horseshit. That's self-flattering horseshit. And no, as far as the polls, no, I'm not concerned. I'm not going, because like you say, her campaign is not nearly has not nearly been going for as long as the Clinton or Biden campaigns had been at this point. And given how brief a time she has been the candidate, I think her polling is fantastic, and the trajectory of her poll numbers is even more encouraging than what the numbers currently are. So no, the polls don't really worry me. David Colby, who finally found a question. Do you ever feel bad for the Talarians or the Von Nakat or the weird Mongol guys from TOS or the Kazon or that unknown species that got wiped out by a godlike entity in that TNG episode that was basically just a Twilight Zone script, The Survivors? Imagine being a species that bet their entire gimmick, their planet-wide multi-billion person culture on being a warrior, and then you get into space, and not only are you not the only warrior species, you're not even the most impressive one in your quadrant. Imagine the cultural malaise that must settle on these worlds, aware that they're just not as good as the Klingons. The Klingons, Steve. Imagine being shown up at your one thing by the Klingons. At least the toxic garbage people from Voyager had a unique gimmick. They can take pride in that, I suppose. So if you never felt bad for the Talarians, maybe spare them a thought now. Or not, they fucking suck. All warrior races suck, just uniformly assholes from top to bottom. I agree. I agree with everything you have said in this question. And I would probably feel bad for them or feel some emotion for them if I did not honestly and truly not give a shit about the aliens in Star Trek. I say that over and over again. I feel like, people think I'm just kidding. I don't give a shit about the aliens. I don't care. Fuck them. I don't care. I care about individual characters who may be, members of various alien species, but I care about those characters as characters. I don't give a fuck what made up alien race they're. I don't give a fuck about their made up dumb alien culture. I don't care. But you're right. There are quite a lot of warrior races, and it does have to be dispiriting, let's say, to finally make it out into the galaxy and realize that your warrior race deal is a dime a dozen and your version of it is one of the shittier versions. That does have to sting a little. Stephen G. Clenard. Hey, Steve, I got a monkey on my back which just won't quit. I decided to continue treating my hypochondria with those black market handcrafted artisanal homeopathic placebos, but I'm afraid I may be becoming dependent on them. I've been exceeding the usual dosages and have secured multiple sources, but sometimes my supplies dry up and I can't score any. When this happens, I experience severe withdrawal symptoms, most notably moderate thirst, and an intensification of my hypochondria. Help! What can I do? Is there something like homeopathic methadone for placebo junkies like me? I know that I can rely on your expertise, as you are not a doctor and not in the pocket of Big Pharma. You know what works really good? You know what's a really good form of homeopathic methadone that you can take to wean yourself off of the homeopathic placebos? I'll tell you what is those mints that come in the little tin case. What are they? What are they called? The little round mints that come in the metal case. Mints in metal tins. Altoids. Altoids are really good for that. So what you need to do is go to your local gas station or grocery store. They'll probably be in like the end cap or the little rack in the checkout aisle. Get yourself a tin of Altoids, and whenever you're feeling, like you're kind of jonesing for a homeopathic placebo, and you've run through your supply, just pop yourself an Altoid, and You know, maybe even like let it sit on your tongue a little bit just to get it into your bloodstream, you know, and see how that goes. See if that works to, you know, to quiet the tremors a little bit. Best of luck to you, my friend. I really hope you don't have to end up checking into placebo rehab. Although I don't want to fast forward your little deal here. That might be the next one. Agent Meister, who believes that if wit were shit, Trump and company would be constipated. I like that. Peldor Joy, Steve, which would you prefer to be, a pirate or a cowboy, and why? A cowboy, because cowboys are cool and pirates aren't. I mean, I'm not going to say that like there's never been a cool pirate ever, or that no pirate characters are cool, but like cowboys just as a whole vibe. Cowboys are way cooler than pirates. Cowboys are way cooler than pirates. They ride horses. They're all dirty and dusty. They wear cool vests. They have ropes. They ride horses. They're just cooler. They're just, you know, they live out on the plains. They have really cool songs. What the fuck songs do pirates have? There ain't no good pirate songs. What the fuck is a good pirate song? Some fucking sea shanty that somebody would have been singing during COVID? Fuck that. Most of those aren't even pirate songs. Those are sailor songs. Pirates didn't make those up. How many great cowboy songs are there? God damn, there's so many great cowboy songs. Way more awesome cowboy songs than there are fucking pirate songs. Fuck, you know what? Fuck pirates. Fuck pirates. Cowboys all the way, baby. John Wayne never played no pirate. Of course, John Wayne in his real life was a massive piece of shit, but the fact remains, he was a massive piece of shit who never played a pirate. So think about that. Even John Wayne wouldn't play a pirate, that massive piece of shit. Simon Moody. Hey, Steve, some of your recent vids on Star Trek characters sparked a thought. Did the creators of Voyager deliberately make B'Elanna to try and fit and recapture the success and vibe of Kira? I've had a look around and can find nothing beyond speculation to support this, save that the creation of B'Elanna was primarily them wanting a hybrid race character. But given the troubled childhood, tough exterior, complex emotional issues, problematic aspects with their parents, relationship with violence, and neither being fully Starfleet, it just seems a little odd to think this wasn't intentional. Do you think they tried with admittedly a very different take on that sort of character to hit the same success a second time? And if so, how well did they do? I don't know how much. I don't know if they were when the creators of Voyager were coming up with B'Elanna. I don't know if they had a checklist of here's a bunch of attributes from Kira that we can, you know, port over onto B'Elanna. I don't think it was that. But they are definitely a similar character type. And I do think if you look at the casts of Star Trek shows, especially from TNG on, they do tend to make use of the same character types, and the main casts do tend to be composed of the same collection of character types. So yeah, B'Elanna is very much a similar type to Kira, and there are specifics in their characters that are similar as well. You know, like you said, similar disposition, similar sort of troubled background, similar ambivalent relationship to Starfleet, with Kira being in the Bajoran militia and B'Elanna being a former member of the Maquis, who is sort of is unofficially a member of Starfleet while she's on Voyager's crew, but she's got the provisional rank like the rest of the Maquis people do. But so, I mean, I do think there are similarities and they're the same type, but I don't know if if the writers of Voyager were consciously saying B'Elanna will be our Kira. It's more B'Elanna will be our version of this type of character, you know, the sort of tough, badass woman character that they even had on TNG in the first season. They had Tasha, and she didn't last, but they had Tasha as the TNG example of that as well. So that was a character type that they, you know, went back to at least a few times. And I think B'Elanna was their attempt to do that. But whether she was specifically keyed off of Kira, probably not, but they were the same type. The always tired, some random geek. I don't have much of a question this time, so I will just bump Joanna's begging bowl. And yes, thank you, Steve, for sharing Joanna's links when she was panicking and thought she would lose electricity in 2 days. She did get enough money to pay that bill and still have power. But as of Tuesday, she's in the hole with an account balance of negative $52.64. I'm not sure if she has food for her and her trans NB son. And I don't think she gets paid until the second. Life on SSDI. It is only $1,200 a month. I don't understand how anyone in government, including the Dems, thinks that is enough to live off of. Saphira Joe on Cash App, Ko-fi, and PayPal, posting the links in the chat. So please, if you see those in the chat or in charitylinks.page, please make use of those. She will get money from me on the day of the ask away, but what I'm afraid of, as this keeps on happening, overdraft fees could eat up more and more of Joanna's SSDI check, just causing a financial death spiral, and no way for her to get out of it since she's disabled and can't work. Death by other means. Well, I mean, it goes to demonstrate not only the inadequacy, but the cruelty of that kind of welfare policy. You're right. What sense does it make to identify someone who is in need and identify that they are deserving of a welfare payment to help them keep food on the table, keep the lights on, et cetera, but then limit that payment to such a small amount that it doesn't actually fulfill the need? Like, that doesn't make any sense. I feel like the reason, and I mean, Democrats are guilty of this too. You're quite right to point that out. But the underlying philosophies, it comes from the right, comes from conservatives. And it's this skepticism of social welfare, this skepticism of government benefits. Well, it's the moral hazard. People have become dependent on it, and we have to give them a little bit of money so they don't outright starve. But we can't give them too much because we want them to eventually, go out and get jobs and go back to work. And in the case of someone like Joanna, whose condition is such that she can't work, what do you do there? And again, if you're willing to go this far and acknowledge there are some people in this country who are so destitute, who are so impoverished, that the only thing to do, the only moral thing to do is for the government to just give them money and say, look, you need this. You're poor because you don't have money. So here's some money, right? And we do this in the form of social welfare programs. Okay. So we've agreed that that is a necessary thing. Why are we not giving them as much as they need? I don't understand it either. And it's one of the things that I wish would change, Yeah, it makes no sense to me to have social welfare programs to supplement the needs of the poor and then structure the payments through those programs in such a way that the payments are inadequate to fulfill the need that they were created to fulfill. It makes no sense. Andy Lauer, hey Steve, I can't afford live music anymore with concert tickets costing hundreds of dollars, even more on the resale market. If I had the kind of money live music costs these days, I'd start my own space program. Luckily, I have some great concert memories. What were your first, favorite, and most recent concerts? What concert was the biggest disappointment? And what artists were you glad to have seen before they retired and died? Mine, first, Neil motherfucking Diamond in 1986. He rocked my face off. Favorite, Paul McCartney, 1993. Loud as hell in a massive fog bank rolling in from the Mississippi River made the light show in Live and Let Die amazing. Most recent, Bare Naked Ladies. A friend gave us tickets, didn't know I needed to see that show. Biggest disappointment? Elton John, 1995. Off-key, poorly mixed, and plain boring. Glad I got to see them. Yes, 1991, the Union Tour, with 2 complete lineups of the band. Thanks and have a great weekend, everyone. Well, thank you for sharing your memories, Andy. That sounds awesome. My answer to all of your questions is not going to take very long. Nobody. I've never been a big concert goer. I cannot remember I've never been to see anybody, who you would have heard of. Like, I've never been to a major concert. I've never been a concert goer. I've never felt any great desire to go. So unfortunately, I have no answer to your question. But thank you so much for sharing your experiences. Here's a question from a patron of the anxiety-free and completely neurotypical Shives. I believe that is accurate. To the best of my medical self-knowledge, I believe that is accurate. I recently have returned to the classics. No, not Homer, Virgil, or Socrates, not Lao Tzu, Sun Tzu, or Confucius, not even the more recent like Dickens, Tolstoy, Voltaire, or the Americans, Twain, Hawthorne, and Paine. In fact, the classics I refer to are your 5 series iterations. Viewed about 30 across the run of the shows, just shy of 9.5 years, that's perseverance. They have held up quite well enough that if you are ever short on content, you could use your not actually Trek actually tactic. I think you call it low effort. Others say lazy yet funny, LOL, and overdub current names and places on what sadly are fundamentally the same news stories today still. Query: when do you think Clarence Thomas woke up and found himself suddenly white? And why hasn't Trump, Fox, or the Republicans publicly pondered that? Yes, I know birds of a feather and peas in the same pod, or maybe just hypocrites. Shout out to Gus Walls. Always be yourself. Well, I'm glad you're enjoying the old 5 things videos. I think I don't usually go back and watch my stuff when it's been that long, but I'm glad to hear that they hold up well. I was quite proud of a lot of those videos, so I'm glad that you enjoy them. As for Clarence Thomas, I mean, I think he's always been like this. I mean, if you look back on his career from, his career as a lawyer in the early 80s, he's always been like this. He's always had this strange idea that you can outwork racism, or, racism only affects you as much as you admit that it exists. And if other people of color just worked as hard as he did and didn't blame their troubles on racism, that they could be successful in their lives just the same as he has been. It's a very self-centered and very selective view of the racial inequities in this country. And but as far as I can, and I am by no means a Clarence Thomas scholar, but from what I understand about the man and his career, he's kind of always been like this. So who knows? Jan finally figured out how to afford to join. 2 points, Ari, Rump, and Arlington. If he was there for the 3rd anniversary of the end of the Afghanistan war, why not the 1st and 2nd anniversaries? Rhetorical. And why is DeJoy still in charge of the U.S. Postal Service? Outrageous. Well, yeah, the first one is a rhetorical question, because I think we know the answer to that. He wasn't running for president on the 1st and 2nd anniversaries of the event that he was attending Arlington to commemorate the 3rd anniversary of this time. Yeah, he had no need for a political stunt. So he did not attend one. And as for why is DeJoy still in charge of the post office, I agree with you. It's outrageous. He was appointed during the Trump administration. The way the post office works, the way the Postmaster General works, it's not a direct presidential appointment. The Postmaster General is appointed by a board of governors of the Postal Service, and the members of the board of governors are chosen by the president. So it's kind of an indirect presidential appointment. The president appoints the board that then appoints the Postmaster General. So I suppose Biden has not taken steps to remove DeJoy out of, and this is a recurring issue with Joe Biden. As much as I admire a lot of his career and I admire a lot of things about the man, but he has a very old-fashioned and very stubborn attachment to the norms of institutions. And while completely disregarding those norms can be disastrous, as we've seen from Trump, like Trump is the exact opposite. Trump doesn't give a shit about any norms or any, established ways of doing things in institutions at all. Like he would be happy to just set fire to everything. He doesn't give a shit. You don't want that either. You need a balance. You need someone who will respect and uphold the established norms, but is also able to see when the envelope needs to be pushed a little, when the traditional way of doing things needs to be set aside in order to, fix a more urgent problem, and is willing to do that. And Biden, I feel like um, he has not taken steps to replace DeJoy or appoint a board of governors that would replace DeJoy, because he respects that system, and he doesn't see it as the role of a president to directly intervene on the appointment of the postmaster general, and he just hasn't done that. I agree with you. I think it's an outrage that DeJoy is still there. I think it's an outrage that he was ever there to begin with. But if unless I missed my guess, that's the reason why Biden has not taken steps to toss him out on his ass. Isaiah Taylor. So, Steve, what TV show theme song / intro speaks to you on a personal level? I just got done watching Star Trek Voyager's theme, and holy shit, did it pull on my emotional heartstrings. I see a lot of myself in Voyager and her crew, lost in space and trying to get home, whatever home is to me, whatever that destination holds for me. As I've probably described in other episodes of Ask Away, I've had a pretty difficult life coming up, and I still struggle to find my place in society. Yet, like the USS Voyager, I persevere and move forward. The opening music is so triumphant and graceful, but alternates to somber and pensive. My absolute favorite part is Voyager passing behind that eclipsing moon before warping into the nebula. Like Janeway once said in one episode, we may never get home, and I may never find my place in society, but I press on undaunted, continuing Voyager's mission. Happy Bell Riots Day, and I'm still talking to that girl that I talked about 2 weeks ago. Well, that's great. Good for you. I hope that continues to go well. I can't think of a theme song that I have the kind of personal connection to that you describe having to Voyager's theme. Although on a purely musical level, I agree. Voyager's theme is gorgeous. I watched my retro review this week was a Voyager episode, was Child's Play. And I always watch the episode that morning. So yesterday morning I watched Child's Play and heard the Voyager theme. And it is, my feelings about Voyager as a show are extremely mixed, leaning negative, as you know, and as people who watch my Star Trek stuff regularly know. But that theme song, man, I can't complain about that. The theme song to Voyager is beautiful, is just beautiful. So I'm right there with you there. For myself, I have always loved, I love the opening theme to Twin Peaks. Angelo Badalamenti's opening theme to Twin Peaks. It doesn't really touch on anything personal to me. It's just an absolutely beautiful piece of music. It's so sad. It's so beautiful and sad. And it's very rare to encounter a theme song for a TV show that is that unapologetically sad. I mean, and it's beautiful. Like it's one of the most beautiful pieces of music I think ever written for television. And it captures the mood of Twin Peaks, and it captures for me what I think is the secret of Twin Peaks and what gives Twin Peaks its staying power, because everybody who has seen Twin Peaks and remembers it fondly, they always, they talk about the typical David Lynch things, the quirkiness, and the sort of the surreal bits and the absurdist bits. And those are all great, and those are all very much part of the show and part of the appeal of the show. But what really gives Twin Peaks staying power for me, especially in the first season, which is the really good part of the show, is that underneath all of that weirdness and all of that dream-like stuff and all of that quirkiness, underneath everything is this undercurrent of just inexpressible sadness. Like that's a show for everything else about it, for all of the absurdist elements to it, and all of the crazy characters that we meet and all the things that happen. If you reduce it down to the very essence, that's a show about the aftermath of a teenage girl being murdered. And that sadness never goes away. And that sadness, that tragedy, that deep well of loss runs through the entire show. and it finds expression in that theme song. Like if for whatever reason you forgot about how sad the fate of Laura Palmer is when you're watching Twin Peaks, that theme song will bring you right back to it. It is so sad, and sets the tone for the show and for what is really important in that show. So yeah, the Twin Peaks theme, I will say. Just a dead bear carcass in Central Park, Brian McKinley. Hello, Steve. While I'm not complacent, I have confidence that Harris can win in November, barring Electoral College gerrymandering. The polls keep showing the race being super close, but there are lots of problems with how polling is conducted that make them unreliable. Democrats are excited now to vote, so our turnout will be high. A large majority of independent voters are supporting Harris. In addition, Trump has been losing support among Republican voters since he started, and the Nikki Haley votes in the primary prove that. There are no Democrats for Trump, but there are Republicans for Harris, Lincoln Project, etc. So that's something like 2/3 of the voters who are either committed to voting Harris or strongly leaning that way. Just wanted to spread some optimism. My question is, would you like to see actual conservatives break away from the GOP and form a center-right party? It would take away any chance of the GOP power going forward and help end that party faster. Yes, I would love that. I would love if the right-wing party split into two parties and then neither party had a realistic chance of gaining a majority for a very long time, and the Democrats could actually get things done for at least a few election cycles. That would be fantastic. I would love it. Please, Republicans, please, conservatives who are fed up with the Republicans and fed up with Trump, please split off and form your own party. That would be great. Please do that. I would love that. Anything that makes them easier to beat, anything that turns them into election losers is something I am a huge fan of. Kara, aka the Talking Nerd. Hi, Steve. I know that you're a DC fan, and we both agree that BTAS, Batman Animated Series, is the best animated series ever, with Justice League and Justice League Unlimited coming in a close second. I don't know if we agree on that, but let's go along with that. I do like Batman Animated Series. However, I would like your thoughts on this new Batman caped Crusader. Personally, I think it's dreadful. I mean, almost all of the series Bruce Batman insults, belittles, and chides Alfred throughout the series. This Batman is horrible, cruel, and worst of all, hardly in the series. I would like to know your thoughts on this new series because despite Bruce Timm's input, this series seems to bear very little resemblance to the Batman we know and love. Would like to hear your thoughts, Kara. Well, I haven't actually watched all of it yet. Jason and I are reviewing it. And we didn't do one this past week. I'm not sure. Actually, I need to email Jason or text him and see if we're going to do it tomorrow. We have 4 episodes left to watch. So I've only seen up to episode 6 because we're watching them and reviewing them as we go. I'm not super impressed with it. I wouldn't go so far as to say I think it's dreadful. But I'm 6 episodes into it, and I'm still waiting for something to happen. I'm still waiting for it to get good. Basically, like it's very dull. It's very sort of just so. There's no creative justification for its existence. Because as you point out, Batman the Animated Series is the gold standard, certainly for Batman animated shows, possibly for superhero or comic book adapted animated shows, just period, right? It's still very highly regarded by a lot of people. And and this new show, Caped Crusader, definitely suffers a great deal from any comparison to Batman the Animated Series. So if you're going to do another Batman cartoon show, and especially if you're going to do one that, as this new one does, deliberately evokes the animated series in a lot of ways, from the participation of Bruce Timm to the general sort of look of the show, the production design, the look of Gotham City, the way it's set in kind of a 1930s, 1940s inspired version of Gotham. That's like all of those things invite comparison to Batman the Animated Series. And so if you're going to do that show, there needs to feel, as you're watching it, there needs to feel like there's some reason this exists. And I just don't get that. I don't understand why this exists, except as a commercial venture. Like, it exists because somebody wanted to make a new Batman show that they could sell and make money on. Like, there's a capitalist reason why it exists. There's a commercial reason why it exists, of course, but there should be a creative reason too. You should get a sense when you watch it of what this brings to the table that other shows haven't, that other adaptations haven't, what this tells us about these characters that we haven't learned before, or what stories it's telling us that we haven't seen before that are meaningful and worth hearing. And I'm not getting it so far. You're right that Batman is strangely absent from a lot of it, but I don't think that would be as much of a problem if the other characters that we were following instead of Batman were interesting, but they're not. Like, they're really not. And the result is we get a Batman show where Batman isn't in it very much. The people that we're following instead of Batman aren't that interesting. And when Batman does do stuff, it's usually really basic, obvious stuff that he is often not very good at. And not like, well, he's not good at it because it's year one and he's getting used to it and he's making mistakes. That's not this show. This show is not about an inexperienced Batman learning the ropes. This show is about a Batman who's just really not good at his job. I feel like he's supposed to be, but he's not. There's that thing that I hate in movies and TV where there's that gap between the show that we're supposed to think it is, the show that it wants to be, and the show that it actually is. You know? And if you have too big of a disparity between those things, you're not going to have a good show or a good movie. So no, I am not impressed with it so far. Ben Douglas, hi Steve. I occasionally see videos where Trump supporters are asked what he could do that would make them change their vote, and shake my head when they can't come up with anything. So my question is, what could Kamala Harris do that would make you change your vote? Credible reporting that she intended to nuke my house would probably do it for me, but are there any less far-fetched scenarios that would change your mind? I mean, as long as she's running against Donald Trump or anyone from this current mask-off, Nazi-adjacent version of the Republican Party, it's really hard to imagine what she could do. Because, I mean, and people would say, well, you could always vote third party. Voting third party makes it easier for one of the other two candidates to win in the current system. That's just a fact. Voting for third party candidates are vanity candidates, and votes for third party candidates are vanity votes. As our system is currently constructed. That's just the way it is. So if I were going to vote for a third party instead of voting for Kamala Harris, I would probably be better off it'd be the same thing to just not vote. Just don't vote. Or at least, don't vote in the presidential election. I would still want to vote down the ballot. But no, I can't imagine anything that Harris could say or do that would make me prefer Trump to her. Like that. I can't even fathom what that would be. Because that would be the choice. Because if it's not Harris, it's Trump. So what could she do that would be so bad that would make me think we might as well have Trump? I can't imagine. MW Ridra, hey Steve, I'm starting to get a bit stressed about politics again. We're definitely better off than we were 6 weeks ago, but a lot of leftists are back on their bullshit now about Kamala not being good enough, so they're not going to vote, while Trump and other Republicans are being just the absolute worst and being so transparent about it, and their support doesn't seem to drop at all. How the hell is this going to be even close? I used to be a conservative until about 15 years ago, and even I do not understand how modern Republican politicians can be so absurdly vile and their base is still 100% for them. Even if Kamala wins, it looks like the GOP will be taking the Senate back too, based on the current numbers. Why are we like this? Well, let's not, give up hope on the Senate yet. Let's see how long Kamala's coattails are. I don't know. I often wish that the left would borrow one thing and one thing only from the right, and that is their stubborn determination to win elections. The problem with the left especially the far left, is that they don't care enough about winning elections. They have convinced themselves or been convinced that voting doesn't matter and elections don't matter. And the problem is, A, that's not true. Voting does matter and elections do matter. Elections matter more than probably anything else in terms of setting the large scale course for the country. But also all the stuff that leftists claim is more powerful than elections, a lot of them don't even do. So it's like, okay, you don't want to vote. You think voting doesn't matter. You think, organizing on the local level is more important. Okay. So are you doing that? And some are. Don't get me wrong. Not all leftists are all talk. There are leftists who absolutely put their money where their mouth is, and they have their praxis is just as active and vital as their rhetoric. I'm not trying to paint all radical leftists with the same brush, but there are quite a few, especially online, these sort of the fabled terminally online leftist, right? Talk a lot of shit about electoral politics, about how it doesn't matter if you vote or not, how it's all rigged, how both parties are the same, blah, 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 blah. And then their alternative is nothing. They're just running their mouth to sound smart, to cosplay as a revolutionary in a revolution, for a revolution that they themselves would probably not even fight in if it ever happened, which it wouldn't. So it's frustrating. And I do wish that the one value that the right wing has, everything else about the right is absolutely awful and nightmarish and should not be copied by the left at all. And I'm glad that it's not. But the one thing the right has on us is they care about winning elections, and they know how to put their differences aside and huddle up and vote for their candidate. And that's why they win. And that's why when the left wins, it's because we've had massive voter turnout and we have overwhelmed the right. But we don't do that every time. I wish we would, but we don't. And when voter turnout is lower, we don't win nearly as often because we allow ourselves to be divided, because we allow ourselves to be peeled off by these vanity third-party candidates. Like I said before, don't vote for the Democrats. They're too corporate. Vote for the Green Party. What the fuck am I going to vote for the Green Party for? What is that going to accomplish? I might as well wipe my ass with my mail-in ballot and flush it down the toilet for all the good voting for the Green Party, especially in a fucking presidential election, is going to do. Use your fucking head. But yeah, I'm not as nervous as you are. I'm not as, I agree. We should treat it like it's going to be a close election, and we should push all the way to election day, and we should not take it for granted. But I am optimistic. I'm optimistic not just about the presidential race, but I'm optimistic about the down ballot stuff too. I'm not saying that I expect there to be a massive blue wave, but at the same time, I wouldn't be surprised. I'm not expecting it, because to expect it would be to set myself up for heartbreak when it doesn't happen. So I'm not expecting it. I'm not expecting anything. But I'm hopeful. And we'll just leave it at that. Russell. Hey, Steve, 2 questions. Actually, one really brief. Hope that is okay. But you have mentioned many times over again that because Trek is fictional, continuity errors don't really bother you. However, you said Easter eggs, and remember this in stories. Do I mean what's the difference given the fact that it is fictional? I bring this up because of something I've been wanting to discuss for some time, Dr. Bashir and his replacement. And I don't see the begotten as a continuity error, but rather something of a larger story telling what if the founders intended Odo to find that baby. Keep in mind later on down the series, the female founder says returning Odo to the Great Link means more than the Alpha Quadrant itself. And I believe her to be genuine given how events unfold throughout the show. I don't know. What are your thoughts on the whole Bashir replacement story arc? Thanks, Steve. See you soon. I think people overthink it. I think the Bashir changeling thing is something that the writers of the episode where it's revealed that Bashir is a changeling came up with while they were writing that episode, and they worked it out so that Bashir would have been a changeling for a few episodes leading up to that, but no longer than that. I think in the episode that Dana and I just watched on Trek Reluctantly, in Purgatory Shadow, which is the episode where it is established that the real Bashir has been in a prison camp for a couple of weeks, I think he says, about a month maybe. And the Bashir on Deep Space Nine is a changeling that has replaced him. I think they came up, I'm pretty sure they came up with that while they were writing that episode, that they did not plan that ahead. They came up with it, and then they kind of worked backwards from it and said, okay, if we say that he's been a changeling, how long has he been, and when did the change happen, and et cetera, et cetera. So no, I don't think that was planned ahead all that much. And I think attempts to kind of make it make sense retroactively are fine. Like if that's the kind of viewer you are, if that's the kind of fan you are, and you need to come up with like a sort of framework as to why it makes sense. And maybe the Bashir changeling was involved with the baby changeling that Odo found, and et cetera, et cetera. And maybe it was part of a larger plot. Like, I see no reason whatsoever to think that much about it, or to get that deep into constructing a framework for everything to make sense in. If you do, and that adds to the show for you, great. That kind of thing never really occurs to me, and I don't really care. I'm happy to treat it as what I think it is, which is it's a plot twist that they came up with while they were writing that episode, and they figured out a way to make it work and make it make sense, or at least have it make enough sense that it doesn't completely, contradict what they had already done in previous episodes, which is good writing. It's good writing. Not everything has to be planned out meticulously years in advance. Like Michael Straczynski, J. Michael Straczynski planned out Babylon 5, at least the important beats of Babylon 5. Like he had the major beats of the whole 5-year arc before he ever started actually producing the show, right? And that worked out really well because Babylon 5 was a great show. But that's not the only valid way to do it. You can just make it up as you go along. That's completely fine. Making it up as you go along gets a real bum rap. Like, there are people who criticize the Star Wars sequel trilogy, and they say, well, the problem is they didn't have it all worked out ahead of time. That's not the problem. I mean, they could have done that, and it might have been better. Who knows? But the fact that they wrote one movie at a time and made it up as they went along is not the problem. You know how I know that's not the problem? Because that's how George Lucas did the original 3. This myth that Lucas had all 3 planned out all along. No, he didn't. It's okay to write and make it up as you go along, as long as what you are making up as you go along is good and makes sense in context with what has come before, if you intend it to be part of a series. That's all you need to do. And that's what the writers of Deep Space Nine did. They said, we have a plot twist involving Dr. Bashir that will reveal that he is not who he appears to be, and we're going to do it here. And if we do it here and we establish that he's been this way for this long, then it will still make sense with the other episodes we've made up to this point in the season. And that's what they did. So, good job, writers of Deep Space Nine. Said Merck, hey Steve, everything is looking up for the election. Voter registration for traditionally Democratic groups is absolutely exploding. Harris walls are taking in ridiculous numbers in campaign donations and keep climbing in the polls. We could be, as we hope, looking at an absolute destruction of Republicans in this election. I'm going to be doing phone banking for Harris myself. When I look back on this in 10 or 20 years, I don't want to say 2024 was when fascism was defeated in America. I want to be able to say 2024 was when we defeated fascism. I want to live the rest of my life knowing I did my part, even if it was a small part. But my question, Democrats have been going on for years about how evil and dangerous Trump is, and they're right. But now Walz and Harris are making a public point of talking about how weird, how pathetic, how lame Trump is and his ilk are. And they're right. And that seems to be working better. Why do you think that is? I think it's the Emperor's New Clothes effect. I think treating Trump as as a weirdo, as pathetic, as incompetent, as a buffoon. And not just Trump, but his, his hangers on and as you say, his ilk, treating them like that. It's not only accurate because that is truly who and what they are, but that robs them of anything that is impressive, any authority in the minds of people. It takes away whatever aura they may have had, right? You can talk about the threat that Trump represents to democracy, to our country, and the legitimacy and the realness of that threat. But you can, and they're doing that as well. And that's also true, as you say, and that's very important. But you can also talk about how Trump as an individual and all of these guys, and it's mostly guys, as individuals are such neurotic, creepy weirdos who are just like morbidly obsessed with people's private lives and with the genitalia of trans people and the sex lives of queer people. And they're terrified of immigrants and they're terrified of non-Christian religions. And they just have all of these really dark, oddball, prurient obsessions. And they're just weird. They're just weirdos. In addition to being fascists, in addition to being aspiring authoritarians, aspiring tyrants, they're just weirdos. And you know who else were weirdos? The Nazis. The Nazis were just massive fucking weirdos with all kinds of weird beliefs and weird obsessions. They were just weird, nerdy little losers. And that's what Trump and his people are as well. They're just weird, oddball, nerdy little losers. And when you call them that, it robs them of their mystique. It robs them of their power. You can say Trump and what he represents, Trump being in the office of president, that is scary. That is threatening. That is what we must prevent at by any means in this election. But Trump himself, as a person, as an individual, nothing impressive about him. Nothing threatening about him. Nothing to be scared of about him as an individual. Apart from the power that he commands in his mob and the political power that he seeks to command. Without that, Trump is just some old weirdo. Some sad old liar who is desperate to convince everybody that he's the greatest thing since sliced bread, and he's not even close. So that's why that works, because it's the little kid in the Emperor's New Clothes saying he's naked and breaking the spell. That's why it works, and that's why I hope they keep doing it. Air One Fire, who says, quote this quote. Hi, Steve. So 2 months ago, I concluded I'm no longer able to support myself enough to pay rent. I've moved out to my parents in the hopes of saving up over the next bunch of months. But now I also think continuing my business is a bad idea too, based on how I'm unable to do the work almost at all. This means I'll probably have to find a job. I don't want to have a job, but I really don't want to run a business either. What I want is mostly just sleep. However, last time having a job was good for my mental health, and that was crappy shift work. It would be even better if it was online 9 to 5. Running a business on the side would then be free of paying Social Security and such. And if I could work on my self-discipline in my free time, which I expect massive failure, I could get back to being self-employed full-time maybe in the future. What do you think? Do you have any advice for me? At least my parents are supportive, so I don't feel like too big of a burden. Well, that's really good to hear that your parents are supportive, and hopefully you'll have some time and some space to kind of work out whatever you're going to do and whatever you want to do long term. My advice is, if what you're doing now isn't working, do something else. I mean, it's really as simple as that. And it sounds like that's what you're getting ready to do. What you're doing now, what you've been doing, isn't working. It's not working financially because you say you can't afford your rent, and it's not working emotionally and mentally either, right? Because you're drained. You just want to sleep. You're not excited about it. You're not into it. Okay, what you're doing now isn't working. Because of the support of your parents, you have the opportunity to try something different. So do that. Do that. And it's up to you to decide what shape that takes and what that is. But I think you're on the right track right now. You recognize that what you were doing was not working. So you're going to do something else. And good for you. And good luck. I hope the something else that you do next works out for you better. And last question from Bored Trekkie. Hey, right at the limit. That's right. You got this one in with just a few minutes before the 6 o'clock deadline. Just wondering if you think a truly gritty Star Trek show can meet expectations. If they really went full dark necessity with the originally proposed Section 31 series as opposed to a movie, I'd totally be down for it. But as it stands now, it looks just shocking to be shocking. I love most new Trek, even Discovery, but the Section 31 movie trailer seems meh. Well, I think a gritty Star Trek show could work just fine. I mean, would it meet expectations? It depends on whose expectations you're trying to meet. There are certain people in the fan base who just will never accept a really dark Star Trek show. There's a certain segment of the fan base that will just automatically reject any Star Trek that they do not see as immediately and overtly positive and optimistic and aspirational, because that's what they come to Star Trek for, and that's all they want. They don't want any variation. So certain expectations I don't think will ever be met. But if it's a good show, and as you say, if it's dark and gritty in a thoughtful way, in a way that means something, in a way that has some intention or point behind it, if it is the way it is for a reason, because they're telling a story in a particular way, and it's not just grim, dark, and edgy, right? It's not just sort of superficial attempts to shock people or to be like, this ain't your daddy's Star Trek or any of that, like horseshit, which always reads as childish. They do that stuff. Any project, any movie or TV show that tries to be gritty in that way, they're trying to be mature and adult, but it always just plays as juvenile because you can tell they don't mean it. You can tell they haven't thought this through. They're play acting, right? It's not actually a dark, serious show. It's just doing some, attempted shocking stuff to try and make you think, oh, gee, this is a really adult show. And it's not, So if Star Trek does that, then yeah, it's going to suck. But if they do a dark show that is dark in a truly mature, adult, intelligent way, and it's a good show, I see no reason why it couldn't be good. It depends on the execution. Execution is the most important thing in storytelling, I firmly believe. Concept is very important. Originality is very important. Creativity is very important. Having a good starting premise is very important. But to me, the most important thing of all is execution. Whatever you're going to do it as well as you can possibly do it. And if you execute it well enough, the quality of execution will make up for deficiencies in the other areas. So that would be the most important thing. I agree with you. The Section 31 trailer didn't really blow me away, but then again, that's all we've seen of it so far. Like, I really don't even know what it is yet, other than the general premise of what we saw in the trailer. So, I mean, I'm still going to watch it and give it a chance, and we'll see if it's good or not based on, the show itself, instead of just the trailer. So anyway, that's it for the patron and member questions. I'm going to turn to the live chat for the rest of the show. But before I do that, got a little treat for you, an expected treat. I do this every week, or every Ask Away, but it's time for the premiere of a brand new Stuffy and Friends short. So this short will go up as a standalone YouTube short on my channel tomorrow. But because you are watching Ask Away, you get to see it before anybody else does. So please do enjoy this brand new Stuffy and Friends short. You're wrong. 9, you are wrong. Stuffy, step in and settle this.
What are you fighting about?
Who played Hoot in Black Hawk Down?
Christian Bale?
No, it was Peter Facinelli.
Bah, as if you would know. You could not even tell the difference between Daniel Radcliffe and Elijah Wood.
Whatever. You couldn't tell the difference between Amy Adams and Isla Fisher.
You could not tell the difference between Ryan Gosling and Ryan Reynolds.
You couldn't tell the difference between Ben Mendelsohn and Tim Blake Nelson.
You could not tell the difference between Matt Boma and Henry Cavill.
You take that back.
You could not tell the difference between Jennifer Connelly and Demi Moore.
I'll kill you for that.
Try it and I will seal your fate. Ah! Eric Bana.
What?
What? IMDb says Eric Bana played Hoot in Black Hawk Down.
Who played Sanderson in that?
Peter Weller.
That's right.
William Fichtner.
No way!
Unmöglich! It says it right here.
Oh, we do argue, but we're friends. You know, that's how you know you've got real good friends. You argue with each other, but ultimately you come together and you're friends. Let's turn to the live chat, shall we? Thank you for hanging around, everybody. Let's see what everybody has to say here in the old live. Oh, look, a super chat from Maiku. Thank you very much. Maiku Wataharu says, "Hi, Steve. As a wrestling fan, I'm curious, what was the moment you realized the matches had a predetermined outcome? For me, it was the empty arena match between Mankind and The Rock." Yeah, that's pretty tough to deny, that one. Yeah, that's pretty obvious when there are so many camera cuts and stuff. I honestly don't know. I don't know if there was like a single light bulb moment for me. I think it was more just a dawning realization. I don't think there was a single moment where I was like, oh, it's not a real sport. I think it just kind of dawned on me gradually as I watched it and grew up. Now, there was also a super chat earlier from Anthony Tiff. Thank you, Anthony, who says, "Did you think the new atheism and skeptic movement contributed to the alt-right, but more specifically to the anti-SJW subculture online?" Oh, God, yes. Big time. No, I think there was definitely a, that's one of the reasons why I stopped, taking part so actively in the atheist and skeptic community, because of the closeness, the proximity to the alt-right, and, anti-feminism was a major part of the YouTube and general online atheist community. There were so many prominent YouTubers who embraced anti-feminism and anti-PC culture, what we would now call anti-woke, so strongly. And yes, absolutely, it contributed to that, for sure. It contributed to it, and it also benefited from it. Yes, for sure. No doubt in my mind. Let's see what else we got going here. Steve Chisnell says, "I wonder what Shives thinks of Red Dwarf and Doctor Who." I've never watched Red Dwarf. I've never watched Red Dwarf, so I can't say about that. What I have seen of Doctor Who, I have liked. I haven't watched any for a while. When I stopped watching, I think I'm about halfway through the Matt Smith era, so I haven't caught up to the new episodes. But no, I mostly like it. I mostly like that, and the newer version, the sort of reboot, starting with Christopher Eccleston. That's all that I've really seen. I saw some of the older Tom Baker ones when I was a kid, when they would play those on PBS, like late at night on Saturday. I saw some of those, but I don't really remember those very much. It's the recent version that I have seen, and like I said, I haven't seen all of it, but what I've seen, I've liked. Kara says, "Yes, we know you love one another, really." Well, not like that. Don't make it dirty. Don't take something pure and beautiful and make it sound dirty. Citizen Morgan says, "Did you agree not giving a Palestinian American voice on stage at the DNC convention?" No, I think that was a mistake. I think they should have given the uncommitted movement and Palestinians a voice at the convention. I wish they would have. I think that was a mistake. 255 AD says, suppose Janeway had been like a science officer who got a battlefield promotion to captain and did the same for all the senior staff. Would that have improved Voyager? Not that by itself. No. The problem with Voyager, to me, again, like I was saying at the in the answer to that question, the biggest problem with Voyager is execution. The concept of Voyager is fine. Janeway being the captain at the start of the show and just being the captain instead of someone who was a junior officer who got promoted out of necessity, like that change by itself, I don't think would have made a difference if the show that followed was the same show. It's the execution that matters, not the premise. Or matters more. I said the premise obviously matters, but the execution, in my reckoning, matters more. Philip K says, have you ever read Batman #1, first appearance of the Joker? If so, what did you think? Well, I wouldn't be much of a Batman fan if I'd never read Batman #1, now would I? Yeah, I've read it. I think I actually have a couple of different copies of it around here somewhere. It's in at least 2 or 3 of the anthologies that I have somewhere around here. Yeah, no, it's a classic little bit of superhero history. And it's one of the most influential Batman stories ever told because that basic story comes up again and again in later comics and in adaptations. I mean, that's the bare bones of that story. The concept of that first Joker story is reused in The Dark Knight. The idea of the Joker announcing his crimes ahead of time, like the Joker does some version of that in The Dark Knight. So yeah, I mean, it's an incredibly influential story. And I mean, yeah, by today's standard, it's kind of simplistic, but I like it. Yeah, I like Batman #1 and I like the first Joker story. Super chat from Anthony. Why do you think so many leftists don't? Many politically progressive Christians such as me, I agree with you pretty much politically. Why leftists don't ally themselves with or don't like politically progressive? I don't, it kind of goes back to the sort of self-defeating aspect of leftism, or of online leftism, at least. Again, I don't want to paint all leftists with the same brush because there are lots of leftists who practice what they preach and do actually do good things in the real world on the ground. But there's a lot of tribalism. There's a lot of purity testing. There's a lot of, if I can't have 100% of what I want, then I don't want anything. And if you don't agree with me with 100% of what I believe in, then I don't want to be your friend. Like there's a lot of that I think is ultimately self-defeating. And to bring it to mentioning earlier, the atheist community, there was a lot of that in the atheist community where I realized, you know what, if the only thing I disagree with somebody on is whether or not there's a God, that person's on my side, right? If we're aligned on every other goal, if we have the same view of society and we want to change society in the same way, and we see the same injustices and we want to fight the same battles, and like if the only thing we disagree on is that you are a Christian and you believe there's a God and I'm an atheist and I believe there's not one, but we agree on everything else, we're on the same team, and there were a lot of atheists who did not see it that way. And again, I feel like that's self-defeating. Stephen with a super chat. Have you ever snapped into a Slim Jim? Asking for a friend. I have snapped into many a Slim Jim, my friend. Many, many Slim Jims have been snapped into by this guy here. Absolutely. P. Morton says, I've never confused Jennifer Connelly with anyone else. Neither have I. That was a joke. Let me see. Nishik and Taki, Buster Keaton in the background reminds me I need to watch Young Sherlock and the Navigator for the 100th anniversary this year. Not Young Sherlock. Sherlock Jr. Young Sherlock is a very different movie. Sherlock Jr., which, by the way, is my favorite movie, period. Which is why I have a picture of it on my wall. Favorite movie ever, Sherlock Jr. Steve Schmeling says, thanks for the shout out in your recent, not actually Trek, actually. Well, thank you for leaving a comment that I felt like I wanted to respond to. 225AD says, I said in the comment section of that YouTube video, suppose someone threatens to shoot me. Is them firing an unfalsifiable hypothetical? Yeah, exactly. Exactly. That's a great way to put it. Let me see. Going back a little further. Geek said, or going back further, more recent. Geek says, I don't know if I want to ask you a question here or save it for the next Ask. Well, that's a decision only you can make, my friend. Another super chat from Anthony. Thank you very much. BreadTube died because of infighting. P.S. Opinion on the main people, i.e. Destiny and Vosh and BreadTube. I have paid absolutely no attention to either one of them ever. So I can't offer you any particular insight on Vosh or Destiny. I have literally never watched a single video or a single stream that either one of them have ever done. Oh, voices in Espanol. Are you a fan of Lord of the Rings? And Geek has it exactly right. No, I am not. I am not a fan of Lord of the Rings. I am not a fan of Tolkien. I have not watched any of the Rings of Power, and I never will. I will die having never watched a single episode of the Rings of Power. Carl Hoffman says, David Tennant is my favorite Doctor. Oh, I mean, so far he's mine too. Like I said, I haven't gotten into the Jodie Whittaker years or the Ncuti Gatwa episodes, the more recent ones yet. But so far, Tennant's my favorite too. Super chat from Kirok 2011. What I meant to ask is, why doesn't continuity errors bother you, but Easter eggs do? Well, because usually Easter eggs are intentional and continuity errors aren't. Continuity errors usually, I mean, by definition, are accidental. It's just something that somebody overlooked. It's just a little mistake that somebody missed. An Easter egg is put there intentionally going, look at me, look at me, look at me. That's the difference. Oh, Smirking Gun, this is a good question. How do you have the time to make such quality content while being stripped down? I struggle with being able to have enough time to really make videos how I want. Lately, I've been doing a lot of videos, and it's been finding the balance between doing the scripted videos that I have traditionally done for the last several years, and also finding things that I think I can make an unscripted video about. Like most of the political videos I've done over the last month or so, talking about Trump and etc. Most of those have been off the cuff, just sort of improvised videos, riffing on a news story or a tweet or something like that. And it's just being able to select something that I feel like I know what I want to say, and I have a really strong sense of what my argument is going to be or what story I'm going to tell. So I don't need to write it. I can just do it right now on camera and have it be good enough to release. And then doing that and getting those videos out relatively quickly. And I shoot those on my phone now. And then having the rest of the time that I need to actually write the more in-depth videos that I want to do. It's just about finding a balance between which ones, between scripted videos and improvised videos, and knowing which one should be which, knowing when I can afford to do an improvised take on a subject that will be good versus when it should be a scripted video that I need to take more time with. Super chat from Zeb S. Have you done any videos on the purported theft of the idea for DS9 from J. Michael Straczynski? And as Christian points out in the reply, yes, I have. Yes, I have. If you look on my channel, a few years ago, I did a video. I can't remember what the exact title of it is, but it's something like, was Deep Space Nine ripped off from Babylon 5 or something like that? Yes, I did a video about that. Kirok 2011 says, by the way, before J.K. Rowling was discovered to be a massive bigot, Harry Potter was huge among many people. Honestly, I never got it. What am I missing? I mean, a lot of people never got it. I don't think you're missing anything necessarily. I mean, it's not the most innovative story in the world. I mean, if it's a fairly standard hero's journey story, just stretched out over 7 books and 8 movies. I mean, I don't know if you're really missing anything. It just might not be your cup of tea. And also, I'm pretty sure you're out of the target demographic. It might just be something that you look at it and you go, it's not for me. And there's nothing wrong with that. Wireless Mike says, I've heard phrases like they've gone so far left, they're right, and blue anon. Any thoughts on this at all? They've gone so far left, they're right sounds a little too close to horseshoe theory for me. Like, I don't think it's fair or accurate to automatically equate far leftists with people on the far right. I think there are still going to be important differences between the two, but I agree with it in this sense. There are kooks on the left, just as there are kooks on the right. You know, there are people who have unscientific, pseudoscientific beliefs on the left, just as there are people who have those beliefs on the right. Now, the specific beliefs may be different, but the fallaciousness of them is equivalent. So yes, there are kooks on the left as well as there are on the right. And there are people on the left who have absolutely ridiculous ideas about how the world works and how it should work. They're just different than the ideas that people on the far right have. Super chat from Design Song 1. Thank you very much. Says, if you could draw an analogy between any situation and episode in the Star Trek universe to the Israeli-Palestine situation, standing the U.S. in for the Federation, what would it be? This is actually easy because I just did, I did in my Beverly Crusher video that I did a couple of weeks ago. I centered a big portion of it on the episode, The Higher Ground, the TNG episode. It's the one where the terrorist group takes Beverly hostage, and Beverly starts out sort of thinking of them as like criminals, and then she gradually starts to realize that the situation is more complex than she thought it was, and that the Federation and Starfleet are not as innocent in the situation or not as neutral in the situation as they claim to be. And there are a lot of really strong parallels between that situation and the Israel-Gaza situation. And specifically, if you slot the United States in for the Federation, which you should usually do anyway, because that's what the Federation is. The Federation is the United States. It's a really, I mean, there are a lot of very close parallels to the Israel-Gaza situation in that episode. Yannick Muller says, I just rewatched Blue Velvet and started listening to your review. You discuss if the father had a stroke in the beginning, but I think it's implied he gets shot in the neck by the faucet handle. Oh, that's interesting. I never got that at all. That's interesting. I'll have to go back and watch that scene again. I've never gotten that. 255 AD says, I've been listening to the Enterprise podcast. I found out some fans call Reed the first English Trek main. Is that racist against Siddig? Yeah, I mean, I think it might be if they're assuming that Alexander Siddig doesn't count as English because he's a person of color, then I guess it is racist. Yeah, probably not intentionally, but yeah. Oh, good night, Dana. Dana's tapping out. Air One Fire says, if I haven't read the books, I don't really know the Harry Potter story. I've seen the movies. That's all I'm interested in. I don't care about the books. I've seen the movies. I've never claimed to have read the books. I'm not saying because I've seen the movies, it's the same as reading the books. I'm just saying I don't care about the books. I've seen the movies. Steve Schmeling says, about your review of The Bonding, no RoboCop 2 joke. You know, sometimes even I miss a few. You understand? I'm not perfect. I don't catch them all. Oh, Kane 20C, that's a good point too. Being a centrist or a moderate doesn't prevent one from being a kook. Absolutely not. Yep, nope. There are centrist and moderate kooks as well. Oh, Arrow and Fire, you hated Blue Velvet? Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Ah, I love that movie. I love Blue Velvet. And then you also go on to say a boring movie about almost nothing from an overrated director. I feel I'm channeling Luke Skywalker from The Last Jedi. It's amazing that everything you just said was wrong. But and by which I mean that I disagree. Obviously, if that's your taste, that's your taste. Art is subjective. You're entitled to think whatever you think and feel whatever you feel. But that is the exact opposite of what I think about David Lynch and about Blue Velvet. Oh man, Zeb S, this is a tough one. Fuck, marry, kill Hulk Hogan, Randy Savage, Roddy Piper. Well, okay. Kill Hogan, fuck Savage, marry Roddy. That's actually pretty easy, knowing the reputations of all three guys. Because Hogan needs killing. He's just a piece of shit. Savage, not the best husband in the world, not the best boyfriend in the world. So I wouldn't want to be married to him. But fuck, okay. A night with the Macho Man, that's one for the resume. And Roddy Piper, happily married for decades. Wife and kids loved him. Seems like he was a good guy to live with. So marry Roddy. Sean Bronzell with a super chat says, here's your bonus for not watching any Lord of the Rings. It finally paid off. Thank you very much. 255 AD said, do I see your last question? Let me see. You ever notice people who make those philosophical arguments like the one I referenced in my question can't cope with being faced with practical numbers on who will actually die? Well, yeah, that's a big blind spot. They always, and that's why they frame it as, like you said in your question, well, you're giving up, you have to be willing to give up your comfort in order to blah, blah, blah. And they frame it as loss of comfort. And they never consider the people who might actually die or even if not die, suffer in meaningful ways that they would not if there was a different result. So yeah, that's a really good point. Dagonite, Dagoonite. This is good. There should be a Star Trek episode where they go back to ancient Greece. Oh, and while trying to get back, they find some mathematicians, and someone says, "Here's looking at you, Clid." Oh, beautiful, beautiful. Nice work. Matthew Park with a super chat. Thank you very much. Says, I have a 76-year-old father in a rural red Ohio county who insists on canvassing for Harris, and I feel that he could be compromising his safety. Suggestions? I mean, tell him to go with a friend. Like, have a canvass with a buddy. But I mean, I wouldn't discourage him from doing it unless you felt like, unless he's like in poor health or something, and you just think it would be a threat to his health to even have him do it. But no, I would, if you're worried about him, getting assaulted or something, have him do it with a buddy. But yeah. Oh, Air One Fire, you're really losing me. You don't get why anyone would like the right stuff either. Boy, you're just, I mean, damn. P. Morton says David Lynch is an unnecessarily dense filmmaker. I mean, obviously, I would disagree with unnecessarily. I mean, like I say, I don't know if you listened to the late seating episode about Blue Velvet, but I mean, my philosophy on Lynch is that the way you should take his films is just watch the movies and just kind of let them happen. Just let it wash over you. Just listen and watch and pay attention and try not to think too much about it while you're watching it. And just let Lynch show you what he wants to show you. And then when it's over, you start thinking about it. And you talk about it with who you watched it with, or you talk about it with someone else who has also seen it. And then you think about it and try to dissect it and try to figure out, like, why was this the way it was, et cetera, et cetera. But while you're watching it, the best thing to do is to just be receiving. That's how I've always done it anyway. So I've never, yes, they are dense. Like there's layers of sound and image, and there are references and there are themes. Like there's a lot going on in them, but most of it is not literal. Most of it is not dense in the sense of, boy, this is a lot to remember, or this is a lot to keep track of. It's more, there's a lot here. There are a lot of ideas here. There are a lot of references here. There are a lot of images here. And like I said, we see it differently in terms of unnecessarily. I don't think it's unnecessarily dense. Lyra Kuro says, Steve, does it bother you when a show or movie fails when right-wing nutters have been crying about them having women of PC women in it, even though that's not why it failed? I guess, yeah, it bothers me when people crow about it and when they use it to claim victory when it has nothing to do with that. Yeah, sure. It's not something that keeps me up at night, but yeah, of course that bothers me. You're welcome, Dagu Knight. I pronounced it wrong at first, but I went back and corrected. Caitlin, I'm right there with you. I do love me some David Lynch. Yeah, Steve, esoteric, absurdist, surrealist. Yeah, he's if you go to movies for relatively straightforward, conventional, linear narratives, and that's all you want, that's all you're interested in, then David Lynch is not going to be your guy. Although some of his films are, like Blue Velvet, is pretty straightforward and linear. It's a pretty conventional story for the most part. It just has a lot of Lynchian flourishes to it. It's not nearly as surreal as like Mulholland Drive or Lost Highway, for example. But there are a lot of unconventional things about it and a lot of sort of weird things about it. So yeah, if you're looking for like straightforward conventional narratives, and there's nothing wrong with those, like most of my favorite movies are straightforward conventional narratives. But if that's all you're looking for and all you're interested in, then no, Lynch probably isn't for you. Nor are any of the other great absurdists and surrealists in cinema. Lynch isn't the only one, but yeah, maybe that's just not your thing. Yeah, Geek, I've seen Lost Highway. It's been a long time. I bet if I watched it now, I would see a bunch of stuff that I completely forgot about. But yeah, I've seen Lost Highway. I liked Lost Highway. I think my favorite Lynch film is still Mulholland Drive, but I liked Lost Highway too. Oh, Steve, yes, I've seen The Prisoner, for sure. I've seen The Prisoner. And Wireless Mike says, have you seen The Prestige? Yes, I have seen The Prestige, and I do like it. I like The Prestige a lot. There were two magician movies that came out that year. That was The Prestige and The Illusionist. The Prestige is terrific. The Illusionist is dog shit. The Illusionist is just garbage. I watched The Illusionist and I was like, fuck this. Jesus. What the fuck is this? That reveal at the end where Paul Giamatti, poor Paul Giamatti, fucking fantastic actor, and he has to do this scene at the end where he's at the train station and he figures it out. Like he figures out what the big deception was, and it's all happening in his head. Like he's figuring it out in his head as he has this moment of realization. So Paul Giamatti has to act as this guy who is like realizing what happened, and he's like doing this turn around in the train station with this look of like excitement and wonder and like dawning realization on his face. Like, that's what happened. And he's got to do that for like 5 minutes because they keep cutting back to him while they go through the insanely, ludicrously overcomplicated explanation of what actually happened in the movie. It's And it's not good leading up to that either, but that especially is just some really clunky filmmaking. But I like The Prestige a lot. I mean, David Bowie as Nikola Tesla. Come on. Christian Bale and Hugh Jackman as rival magicians trying to out magic each other. Like, it's just, I mean, I don't think it's like top tier Christopher Nolan. I don't think it's as good a movie as like Memento or The Dark Knight or Inception, but it's a really good movie. I like The Prestige a lot. And no, I have not. I have not seen Life on Mars or Ashes to Ashes. You versus me says, if you could add an unnecessary body slam to any movie scene, what film and where? Al Pacino body slams Philip Seymour Hoffman in Scent of a Woman. He takes his cane, his white cane, he feels his way over to the table, the other table during that hearing at the end, when he gives his big Oscar-winning, if I was the man I was 9 years ago, I'd take a flamethrower to this place. He does that big hammy thing that won him Best Actor that year. But he does that. But then to put the period on it, he goes over to the table where the other kids are, and he finds Philip Seymour Hoffman's character and just grabs a hold of him and, picks him up and he body slams him on the table. Table doesn't break. That's too much. You don't need to break the table. You slam him on the table, and it looks like it hurts because he just got slammed on a table. You don't need to break the table. But yes, that's what I would do. Streaming Meanie says, hi, Steve. Hi, Streaming Meanie. Yeah, Lear, it bothers me too because, yeah, as you say, the studios learn the wrong lessons. But then again, studios almost always learn the wrong lesson, whether it has to do with representation on screen or something else. Studios almost always learn the wrong lesson. Oh, Manuel, thanks for coming, my friend. Manuel's going to call it a night. It's almost 2 a.m. Thank you for being here. Yes, yeah, the Straight Story is probably Lynch's most conventional film for sure. Yes, Cara, I did get your link to Without a Clue. Thank you very much. I think Dana's up for that, and I just need to talk with her about it as to when we would do that. But yeah, either your version that you uploaded to the Internet Archive, or you also mentioned there's a YouTube version. Yeah, that's great. That's really helpful. I would love to do a back row watch along stream about Without a Clue, because I really love that movie. And I actually just showed it to Dana for the first time earlier this year, and I think she really liked it too. So yeah. Oh, Caitlin, now this is a good point. The Prestige is probably my favorite Nolan movie, partly because it indulges a lot of his tropes, but he wasn't quite so up his own ass yet. That's true. And yes, it's definitely a much tighter film than Oppenheimer. And I admire a lot about Oppenheimer. I think my take on Oppenheimer was it's the first 2 hours. The first 2 hours are a great movie, and then it keeps going for another hour. Like the first 2 hours of Oppenheimer, it's like, oh man, this is good. And then it's like, man, this last hour is a drag. This last hour is really a drag. I don't know if this needed to be 3 hours, Christopher. And yeah, The Prestige is certainly a lot tighter than that. Yeah. Oh, and Boxy Brown with a member message. This is a good question. What will you be watching on Trek Reluctantly after DS9 is finished? I can honestly tell you that we have not looked that far ahead. If Dana and I are still doing that show long enough to get through all 7 seasons of Deep Space Nine, and then after that, she still wants to do more, I don't know. Maybe we'll do TNG, although she's seen more TNG than she has Deep Space Nine. Maybe we'll do classic Trek. I don't know. I guess we could do Voyager, even though I'm not a fan of Voyager, but we could do Voyager just for the hell of it, just so Dana can see it. Another Star Trek show. We honestly haven't thought that far ahead. Yeah, but if we finish Deep Space Nine and she still wants to keep going, we'll pick another Star Trek show. Steve Chisnell says, your opinion on the Coen brothers as filmmakers. I personally love Oh Brother, Where Art. I love the Coen brothers. I love the Coen brothers. I love wacky, goofy comedy Coen brothers, like from Raising Arizona. And I like serious Coen brothers like No Country for Old Men. No Country for Old Men is one of my favorite movies ever. I love that movie. And I can't think of a Coen brothers movie I've ever seen that I haven't liked. Like, I think they're terrific. I think they're geniuses. I think they're fantastic filmmakers. Yeah, Steve, exactly. Hooah! And he body slams him. Exactly. Exactly. Oh, and I have not seen Now You See Me. No, I have not seen Now You See Me. Brooke Era says, why do I not have a Huntress figure? You know, I don't know. I've got Batman and Catwoman, and Huntress in some versions of the story is their daughter. Of course, technically, these action figures are based on these would be the post-crisis Batman and the post-crisis Catwoman. So they are not the parents of the Huntress. That Huntress is the post-crisis Huntress is Helena Bertinelli, is a completely different character, but the pre-crisis Huntress was the child of Bruce Wayne and Selena Kyle. So I guess I could have a Huntress figure and kind of put her in the middle there. I don't know why I don't have a Huntress figure. Good question. Because her costume sucks. That's a big reason. The Huntress is whatever version of it. Has the Huntress ever had a cool costume? Huntress costumes have always sucked. So that's part of it. Streaming Meanie says, have you checked out the new Terminator anime series that just dropped on Netflix? No, I'm probably not going to watch that. I do want to see the new Chaos, the new Netflix show about the Greek gods, starring Jeff Goldblum as Zeus. That looks interesting. The preview for that made it look kind of interesting. I might check that out. I think that came out yesterday or comes out today or something. It's out sometime soon. If I have time to watch some of that, I might watch that. But now I'm not really into the Terminator anime. HB Haga, the animated series, I mean, it certainly wouldn't take long. It certainly wouldn't take it, there's not that much of it. Steve Schmeling says, would a choke slam be funnier? In Scent of a Woman? Maybe, because he could be, he could do this, the cliched, like blind character in a movie thing where he's like feeling his face. I just want to see what you look like, and then instead of like feeling his face, he slides one hand down to the throat, and just goozles him like that. I don't know. I prefer a more traditional move. I like a good body slam. I prefer a body slam to a choke slam. Choke slam is overdone. But I mean, I'm not saying that wouldn't be hilarious to see Al Pacino just straight up choke slam somebody at the end of Scent of a Woman. That would be fucking hilarious. Oh, and but we're just naming movies now. Steve Chisnell says a movie from back before Francis Ford Coppola fell from grace. Tucker, the Man in His Dream. Yeah, again, good movie. Absolutely, good movie. The Goonite. This is a good choice. This is a sadistic choice. Cheesesteak sandwich or pepperoni pizza? Ooh, man. It really depends on the day and the time and what mood I'm in. Most of the time, I'll probably choose the pepperoni pizza, but there will definitely be times when I want that cheesesteak. But on average, probably the pizza. Yeah, Jeff Goldblum is Zeus, and it's like a contemporary thing. He's like Zeus wearing a tracksuit. Like it's Olympus reimagined as like a contemporary setting. So it's not like don't think like Mount Olympus, lightning bolts and togas and that kind of thing. It's more contemporary, but it looks really interesting. Oh, some random geek cheesesteak pizza. Yes, absolutely. There are a couple of places around here that make a cheesesteak pizza, and it's pretty good. It's pretty good. Um, oh, that's true. He does choke somebody in Scent of Woman, doesn't he? Thank you, Gedrin. Yes, that's right. He does. Um, Steve Chisnell says Martin Scorsese's Howard Hughes biopic, The Aviator. Good movie. I like The Aviator. I saw it in the theater when it came out. Not my favorite Scorsese movie, not even close, but it's a good movie. I like The Aviator. I thought it was good. Um, Steve says, speaking as a lifelong aviation geek, somebody needs to do a biopic about Igor Sigorsky. You know who? Okay, so here, the Goonite says TAS or Batman Beyond. I've never watched Batman Beyond. It never remotely seemed interesting to me. I've never watched it except for the Return of the Joker animated movie. I watched that and that was all right. But I mean, no, I've never seen Batman Beyond, so I can't say. I like Batman the animated series, so I imagine I would probably prefer that if I watched Beyond, but I've never watched Beyond. Um, and again, it might be fine. Like I'm not saying I'm assuming that it's bad. It just doesn't interest me. Um, Yeah, but anyway, I was saying about aviation. Steve Chisnell said they should do a biopic of Igor Sigorsky. Here's the aviation pioneer that I would love to see a movie about. Does everybody know who? Has anybody heard of Louis Blériot or Louis Blériot? He was a French aviator in the early 20th century. He was the first pilot to fly a powered airplane across the English Channel. Um, and it was, this was the early days, so it was like a plane that he designed himself and built and everything, and he was the first pilot to fly across the English Channel. And I know who he is because I had a book about him when I was a little kid. There was like a children's book about the flight of Louis Blériot. um, and that story has always fascinated me, and always, sort of, I've had that story close to my heart for my entire life practically, so I would love to see a movie about Louis Blériot. um, Steve Schmeling says, how do you feel about a good meatball sandwich? I love a good meatball sandwich. Who doesn't love a good meatball sandwich? Um, Geek says, how would you rank the animated DC series from Batman TAS to Justice League Unlimited? Um, of the ones that I have seen that are in that series that are part of that sort of shared universe, I still think Batman the animated series is the best. The Justice League show is pretty goddamn good. I'll put the Justice League Unlimited followed by the first season, then where it was just Justice League, because I think Unlimited was probably a little better than the original Justice League. And then Superman the animated series. Again, nothing wrong with that one, but I would probably rank that below the other ones. And the rest of them I don't think I've seen, other than like maybe an odd animated movie here and there. Zeb S, I didn't really dig the animated Batman Year One. I thought it was too literal of an adaptation. It was flat. It was like they just animated the comic, and they didn't really add anything to it. It was just kind of very too straightforward and flat, and just like, well, here's that comic you read, but it's moving now. Here you go. I didn't really dig it. It didn't capture me the way the comic did. Um, Steve Chisnell says Amadeus is, Amadeus. That's one of my favorite movies. God, I love Amadeus. I love Amadeus. One of my favorite movies ever. Yeah. Um, okay, it's almost 8 o'clock here, and I see a couple people dropping off from exhaustion in the chat. So I'm going to wrap this baby up. Now, before I go, as usual, I want to, first of all, Geek put a bunch of links in the chat earlier. Please make use of those. And also don't forget charitylinks.page, which is it's linked in the description. And that is a repository for crowdfunding sites, crowdfunding accounts, and PayPal links and begging bowls and various resources for friends of ours who need a helping hand financially. And if you can possibly help out some friends of ours who are in some economic distress, please, please, please do that. That would really mean a lot to them, and it would earn my appreciation as well. If you would like to become a supporter of this YouTube channel that I do, you can do so by becoming a patron at patreon.com/Steve Shives, or just by clicking the join button to become a YouTube channel member. Either way, one of the benefits you get for being a patron or a channel member at any level is you get to submit questions ahead of time for these Ask Away live streams. And those are the questions that I answer at the beginning of the show. For you, usually it's about the first hour of the show is just responding to patron and member questions. So if that's interesting to you, or if you just want to help me continuing to make videos and continue to do this, please consider signing up and supporting this channel by becoming a patron or becoming a channel member. And thank you all so much. Those of you who are patrons and are members, whether you just joined up recently or you have been for years, I could not do this without you. I appreciate your support so much, and I thank you for it from the bottom of my heart. And if you enjoy this YouTube stuff that I do, don't forget that I'm also on a couple of podcasts that are a part of the Let Me Listen family of podcasts. There is Late Seating, the movie review podcast that I do alongside Jason Harding, where we take a look at classic films and give them a fresh review and see if they deserve whatever reputation they have, be it good or bad. Our new episode of Late Seating features a guest star, Atticus, who is also one of Jason's best friends and a co-host on Jason's original Let Me Listen podcast, Let Me Finish. Atticus joins us to review Blue Velvet because David Lynch is Addie's favorite director. And I personally think that's a good choice for a favorite director. Some folks in the chat disagree with me, but that's okay. But anyway, so you can hear me and Jason and also Atticus as our special guest review Blue Velvet on Late Seating. And there's also the Ensign's Log, the Star Trek themed comedy improv podcast that I am on with Jason and also Dana Cole, who was with us in the chat earlier, but had to go to bed because she was sleepy. Dana was sleepy, had to go to bed. But anyway, that's a Star Trek themed comedy podcast where we play original characters that are existing now, sort of in the background of Deep Space Nine is the era of the franchise that we're in at this point. And we're doing our own thing. Our characters are telling our own stories and having our own adventures while Deep Space Nine stuff is happening in the background. It's a really fun show to do. And if you enjoy Star Trek stuff, and especially if you enjoy funny Star Trek stuff, I would invite you to give a listen to the Ensign's Log, and links are in the video description. Zeb S with a super chat says God is dead. Thank you, Nietzsche. I mean, I guess I disagree because I don't think God ever existed. So how can you be dead if you were never here? But I appreciate the sentiment. All right, let me see if I've missed any final questions or comments. Sentai Ranger Donnie says, I've heard mixed reviews regarding Batman Cape Crusader. With respect to J.J. Abrams, Matt Reeves, Bruce Timm, and those who love that show, I'll stick with the 92 series. Yeah, well, Cara asked about that in her patron question. And yeah, I haven't watched the whole thing yet. I've only watched up to episode 6, but I don't hate it. I don't think it's awful, but I'm extremely underwhelmed by it. And I don't really get like why we need it or what it's doing here. All right. Thank you, everybody. It's good night for me. I appreciate you all being here. Have a good night. Have a good weekend. Those of you here in the U.S. who celebrate, have a good Labor Day weekend this week. And I'll see you for a bunch of videos next week. And Dana and I will be off for Trek Reluctantly this week. So we'll see you week after next for Trek Reluctantly. And then 2 weeks from tonight, I'll be back with another Ask Away live stream. So thank you all so much for your kind attention and your awesome questions and your support. And I'll see you. Bye, folks.